We're good.
Okay, great.
Well,
I'll just say a couple of things here before we get started. Some people might wonder why it's stewardship doing something like this, because I think most of the time people, when they hear stewardship, they think money, Yeah, but the approach we take here at St. Andrews, we have a four-pronged approach. Stewardship, one, financial resources, and we just finished the pledge drive, and we emphasize that. And then another prong that we have for stewardship is talents, and most people are familiar with that. We know that all of us are involved to a certain extent in some activities here at church or in the community or somewhere, and so we want to be good stewards in using the talents that God has given us. So that was our second approach. And the third approach for stewardship is the environment. God has provided us with a wonderful place to live, and so we try to be good stewards of that environment. And just one quick example is like we provide the opportunity for people to bring their food scraps here to church so that they can be processed and reused as fertilizer, rather than being sent to the landfill where more methane is created and so on. And then the approach that we're working on now is the problem we're working on now is this temple approach. Our body, we are all provided with a wonderful body that has capabilities of doing many things. And last year we talked about how important it was to eat correctly, to exercise, and so on. And this year we thought, well, maybe we should look a little bit at the mental aspect of caring for our body. And so immediately we thought of Gail. And she's going to share some things with us that I think will be appropriate. We've all got through Christmas with all the activities and the lights and so on. Now we get to the January blogs, which sometimes can be kind of depressing or at least distressing. So Gail, will let you share your knowledge with us, and we look forward to hearing it. Thank you.
thank you. Good morning. I'm going to read this. It's 8 pages actually, but it can be done pretty concisely, succinctly. And then we'll take questions or discussion or something. Or maybe we'll have some questions at the end too. Happy New Year. And now we are in January. The busyness of the holiday season is past. Many of us are facing major life changes. Some of us are sick. All of us are wondering what the new administration will mean for the country and the world. And what ailed us before will ail us still, but we have to tolerate or deal with it in the bleak months of cold and dark, trees bare and naked, no flowers blooming, and now tax season is upon us. Happy New Year.
Joyous.
Just want this to be relevant. Can you relate to this? Do you feel the weight of anxious thoughts, depressive mood, fear, or despair in the face of what life brings you? Perhaps you would help me define what these intruders into our lives look like or feel like from your own experience. Could you just say a word? First of all, we'll talk about depression, then we'll talk about anxiety, then we'll talk about grief. But if you have any experience with depression, could you give a word or a phrase about that?
For me, it's demons coming out,
Sounds intense.
and sometimes it's having trauma come back up. That you don't want to do, it just comes.
Right. Hopelessness. Yeah. Sadness. What about the experience of anxiety? Does anybody have a word or phrase to characterize that?
Constant mind racing.
Fear. Could happen.
And how about grief? Either fresh and recent or old and deeply inside our bones.
Loneliness, isolation,
Missing someone that's no longer here.
Thank you, everybody. This gathering today is an overview to offer you some ideas that could be helpful. But if you feel really bad or sad right now and cannot stay tuned into what I hope to share, thank you very much for even showing up. Perhaps you could just listen enough to catch something that seems useful to you. If something in particular strikes you, you could write it down if you want. There's paper and pens on the tables, and we can talk further about it later. For some severe mood problems, medications can often help. Better living through chemistry is real. And finding a therapist can also be a good thing to help us talk through what is weighing us down, to find adaptive ways to proceed. If you are feeling so isolated and separated that you consider harming yourself, please tell somebody as soon as possible and get some assistance. I would like to share some strategies and suggestions that might feel relevant. But if you need more than this brief interview, I urge you to seek assistance in some way to reclaim your birthright of good mental health, a sense of connection, and joy. I worked as a psychotherapist for 19 years in Redmond and Everett, Washington for Group Health Cooperative. Any good therapist or caregiver cares about helping you feel better. They want to see you feel freer, lighter, more your best self. They want you to be able to enjoy the life you have been given. And the measure of an excellent caregiver beyond general competence would be that you actually feel loved by that person. Here are some ideas to try on regarding some of the mental stressors that we face. Anxiety is a gift to our lives to a certain degree. We all need a certain amount of anxiety to get us to our goals. Note this cycle. We identify a preferred outcome, and then we do what we need to do to achieve that end. We practice, we work out, we get consultation, we use repetition, memorization, whatever will help us get to our goal. But on the way to it, that anxious possibility rises, threatening that we could lose the contest, come in second, or we might screw up something. So we work harder to nail the outcome we hope for. That discomfort fuels our motivation to achieve success. Along the way, we often learn how to inoculate ourselves against that level of anxiety. We notice what helps and what doesn't, and we build emotional muscle in coping with the unknown or the feared outcome we want to avoid. Does that seem clear? Great. Anxiety and depression can be two sides of one coin. If there is too much depression, anxiety kicks in. And if there is enough anxiety, depression kicks in. Here are some strategies to consider. Focusing is a great tool. Some people light a candle in the evening and sit with it, watching that flickering wick, the bright spot in the light, the bright spot of light in the dim space. This is often suggested as a guide to prayer or meditation because it focuses our energy and attention in such a way as to help us settle into the moment. You might have noticed that when you watch a riveting movie or listen to beloved music, you feel better, no matter how upset or fearful you were before you began watching or listening. This is an example of focusing attention away from the problematic emotion. Can you think of a time when you were dealing with some scary possibility or a great sadness or hopelessness, when you discovered that you could get through a moment or an hour without totally imploding? That is golden, if you can recall a time like that, because it gives you a chance to look at what is transpiring there. Looking at the feelings and the circumstances that are changing is a skill and an opportunity. Whenever we can look at what we are feeling or what is happening to us, we have a chance to change perspective. It is the direct opposite of looking from our feelings, which tends to make us more reactive and behave badly. There is a big difference between at and from. Now I'm bummed because A lot of this was specifically for Jeff, but maybe it'll be okay.
Watch the recording.
Maybe, yeah.
Maybe back.
I often used to say to clients, 1 day at a time, 1 hour at a time, 1 breath at a time. Because a lot of coping is just about buying some time, in which time a new solution might arise. An effective next step might present itself. If you can buy the time it takes for even 1 breath, you might be able to choose a completely different response than you would have if you had allowed your fear and anger to take over. Buying time is a valuable tool. The word Selah in the Psalms, do you know that word? It means pause. I think in the Psalms, the pause is to enhance the reader's impact on the listeners. But a pause can be a powerful tool to buy ourselves a bit of time when we are feeling out of control. I love this little factoid that Selah means pause.
In what language?
I don't know, but there's a pastor here.
Hebrew.
Hebrew, yeah. Here is another idea that could be helpful. Remember that white line on a county road painted on the right side of the lane you are driving in? Do you recall the purpose of that white line? It is a fog line to keep you on track when you cannot see too far ahead. Also, it will give you something to focus on when oncoming traffic with its high beams blinds you. The white line is always there for you to turn your gaze to maintain your position on the road. We often talk about God, Jesus, or Spirit in similar ways, always present, but it makes a big difference if we can tune into that presence. Life often serves us up oncoming blinding headlights, scary possibilities, threats, upsetting thoughts, losses that consume us. Having another thing to focus on is often a lifesaver. Your breath is like that. Here's the point of that story. Following your breath is a skill that helps many people to detach from the scary thoughts that are trying to derail us. Breathe in to the count of 4, breathe out to the count of 5. Focusing on something else gives us a little space in which to think or pause. Does it seem clear?
Yeah.
That's good. Other disciplines help us to learn about our breath also. Examples are yoga, meditation, dance, sports. I even saw a video about a bunch of first responders who took a yoga class from a woman whose main interest was teaching people how to manage their breath. Those first responders were all very physically fit, muscly, strong, somewhat intimidating, and serious people. The teacher's class included no frills, no fragrant oils, no soft music. She taught only about the breath, using multiple different exercises and strategies. The first responders came out of that class saying she had taught them how to survive many work-related hazards. They saluted her because, as they said, they owed her their lives. Mary Stender offers a yoga class here, which is available to everyone in case you might like to check into that. I'm going to go back to our terror thoughts, our anxiety thoughts. We could begin as we did at the very beginning by considering that those terror thoughts are trying to help us. They come from the amygdala, the part of the brain which delivers our fight or flight response. Our terror thoughts believe we cannot handle the situation, and if they just take over, they can protect us. We don't have to see them as the enemy. We could see them as a friendly presence trying to take care of us. But if we have some practice at managing our emotions, we can say to those frightened thoughts, thanks, but I can take it from here. I've got this. What do you do to feel relaxed? So focused, you feel like time doesn't even exist. Do you make art? Do you listen to or make music? Do you walk, play a sport? Do you like to run? Do you call friends? These are all things we might try to help us manage anxiety or despair. Then while we are doing it, notice any relief you experience and register your awareness. Noticing relief is key to progress. It is active noticing, observing, and registering of our experience that helps us look at what we are feeling rather than acting from our frightened feelings. Do you know what that means? Does that make sense?
Repeat that word.
Okay. It is the active noticing, observing, and registering of our experience or feelings that help us look at what we are feeling rather than acting from our frightened feelings. Okay. Take note of where you were on that distress scale at first, the 1 to 10 scale, with 10 being the most relaxed and peaceful you can imagine feeling, and 1 being the most tense, uptight, and upset that you can recall feeling. If you take note of where you fall on that scale at the beginning of any strategy to manage strong feelings, and then again at the end, you will be able to see how helpful that strategy was. It is also a chance to say, I have depression, I have anxiety, I have grief, instead of I am depression, I am anxiety, I am grief. Do you see the difference? Mm-hmm. There are many ways to build on this tiny space these sentences give us. Seeing that we have depression gives us a bit of a chance to figure out what we can do about it, rather than just be overwhelmed in it or letting it be what defines us. There are whole schools of thought about how to externalize symptoms like anxiety, depression, or grief, how to see them coming at us from the outside, like thieves in the night or a trickster coming upon us to take away our energy and vitality. Then, with some distance from the outsider symptom, we can strategize ways to get back the upper hand in our lives. For instance, if depression wants us to stay in the house, lie low, and have no impact on the world, even if this is to protect us in some way, we could think of ways to say, no thanks, I can take it from here, and defy depression's rule that we must stay inside and stay small. We could go outside for a half an hour's walk each day. We could stretch, we could raise our hands up, we could strike a power pose. Then notice our original number on the distress scale has changed. Then notice if our original number on the distress scale has changed at all after an hour, a day, or a week. Here is a related strategy that I've always found interesting. If you are feeling panicky at home or have a depressive impulse to do something unhealthy or dangerous, grab an ice cube and squeeze it for as long as you can. The pain won't harm you, but you will certainly be brought back into the present moment. Then you can make more adaptive decisions about how to proceed, like calling your sibling or a friend, eating something nutritious, describing in writing what is happening for you. Do you know what that word adaptive means? Adaptive decisions? Ones that are positive and beneficial? Yay. This strategy is usually one that a therapist and a client have already agreed upon, so that in the heat of the moment, the client can recall what they agreed to and then can triumphantly report about it to the therapist at their next meeting. Love it. What is your favorite kind of music? Does it transport you to another place or state of mind? It so happens that there are some riveting reasons that music is so powerful for humans as well as other animals. The beat, for example, engages the listener's muscles immediately. The muscles tune in to the predictable beat in anticipation of what will come. And that in itself yields actual pleasure for the hearer. There are other things within music that grab us. But even without scientific studies, most of us know that music can be magically healing, comforting, reassuring, and relieving. So giving yourself some time each day to listen to or dance to music of your choice could be a very good way to get back inside your body and to feel alive again. Pastor Martha gave me a link to a site called Taming the Tiger. It contains a list of 9 things a person can do to feel better in the moment of feeling overwhelmed or dysregulated in our feelings. Dysregulation is very problematic. It is like a panic attack, freaking out, dissociating, or angry, destructive behavior. Mary Beth calls it the Hulk.
Oh, good analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah. By regulating our emotions, we can manage or even avoid subsequent bad behaviors, like the Hulk. Regulating helps us feel a whole lot better. And if we do some of these things more often, we can inoculate ourselves against having that overwhelming dysregulation to begin with. Lots of brain and hormone research is associated with each of these physical experiences. And I'm not going to get into that too much right now, but if you look at the site, you will be able to see videos of a clinical psychologist describing a lot of information. It is compelling, interesting, and informative. Just Google Taming the Tiger. I did, and I watched lots of videos, and it was very cool. And the psychologist is a dream. He's very calm and nice guy. So, okay, so I'm going to tell you what the 9 things are on his list. Acupuncture. Do we know what acupuncture is in general?
Yes.
It's from traditional Chinese medicine. It calms stress. It helps coping. It also helps people stop smoking, deal with trauma. It reduces pain. How it works is by calming the nervous system, energy systems are opened up, allowing the body to heal. This is an interesting one for me. Swimming. Water immersion, either our whole body or even just our face in water, produces physiological changes that give your brain the message everything is okay if you're under your own steam. You know, if somebody else is not pushing your head over the water. So if you have a bowl of water or a faucet running and you grab water in your hands and just put your nose and mouth into it and hold your breath for a count of 4 or 5, let it go, do it again. And there are some mantras that you could say if you wanted to between times. But what happens is either getting into the water or putting our face, immersing our face, our heartbeat is lowered quickly. The volume of blood in our veins being sent through the system is reduced.
It's called shocking the system.
I'm sorry,
It's called shocking the system.
chalking?
Shocking
Shocking.
the system.
Okay. Thank you. I don't know that. Releasing hormones that can calm a person down. So swimming itself is a great resource, but a bowl of water at home works well too. Here's one, hand holding. If you go with a loved one to a doctor's office and your loved one is going to have a procedure, the natural instinct, the natural impulse is to go hold your loved one's hand. And if a small child is going to a new school or a doctor appointment, they often impulsively just reach up and grab the hand of their adult. A great example of this that I heard a long time ago was from the time of the Oklahoma City bombing. There was a man who was volunteering to help survivors who are still buried in the rubble. He did find a woman buried in bricks and debris, and he could do nothing to get her out until more helpers could get to her. But her hand was exposed. So he just held her hand and talked to her, assuring her of his presence and patience as they waited. Can't you imagine the difference between her waiting alone in that situation compared with having another human staying close, giving her skin-on-skin contact while reassuring her? It must have kept her from freaking out, dysregulating, so she could manage the strong emotions that must have been present for her. And he had the feeling of being able to offer something in a traumatic moment that looked otherwise impossible to improve. We can offer hand-holding to someone when needed, and we can ask for it as well. It does not require any special skills, but it yields big returns.
Just to share really quickly, in combat, that's what you do with a fellow soldier, you just step in the line. You give comfort, you roll, you give comfort, you embrace. That's trained behavior so that they don't go into shock. And you actually can save someone's life by using that.
Thank you.
And it's knowing that there's someone in your presence who's gonna give you safety.
Right,
It's a simple thing,
yes,
but extremely important.
right. And in fact, it seems so simple to me. I didn't even watch the videos. I
Yeah.
just wrote what I wrote, but maybe there'd be more interesting brain stuff in there.
Oh, very, very, definitely.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. Dancing, not much needs to be said about this. Singing, together with the benefits of music, singing gives people a chance to share an endeavor with other people and deliver it together. And of course, breath is central. Meditation definitely focuses on the breath in addition to the other things that meditation does for us. Breathing. Breathing is different from singing and meditating. Even our Advent prayers this year, you probably noticed, involved breathing. Let us breathe in, let's breathe out our regret, breathe in the peace of Christ, breathe out peace or something. I can't remember the details. And our pastor often invites us at the beginning of a service to settle in with a few cleansing breaths. Again, focused breathing, focused inhalations, where we inhale to the count of 4 and exhale to the count of 5. And notice that we're trying to get rid of more bad stuff. We're not working so hard on 4, but we are working a little bit hard on 5. Anyway, that is always a benefit. And again, our breath is always there. It's always happening. It's involuntary. We don't pay attention to it. A lot like God, but when we tune into it, amazing things can happen. This one is called power posing. Body language reveals our feelings. The feelings of powerlessness look small and defended. Touching one's neck is an especially strong sign of this feeling. Feeling effective and powerful looks big and it takes up a lot of space, but you can fake it till you make it. You can, in fact, if you change your posture, and we might want to just even try that right now, it increases testosterone to stand strong in boys and girls, and it reduces cortisol, which is the stress hormone. So if you, and there's a video about this, and the woman says, if you stand with your arms up, out, at your sides, anything to make you feel like you're taking up more space, your bodies feel a little bit better. Would anybody like to take a break and do that? Okay, great. Okay. And anything you can think of, anything that will make you feel bigger and stronger. Yeah. Thanks. And the last one, the ninth item, if Martha were here, she would be saying, there's 10 items, but there's really not. There's only 9. The first one in the list is the introduction to the next 9 items. So there's not 10. I was just going to tell Martha that, but she's not here. Anyway, it's called tapping. Have you heard of tapping before? You're about everything.
I'll share later.
Okay.
That the recording is done, I'll share more.
Tapping involves tapping various parts of your body. And this is the karate chop that's in your body. And they say to start there. And there's a mantra or a positive, an affirmation that you can say. So you start tapping and you say, I am doing the best I can and everybody knows. I am doing the best I can and everybody knows it. I'm doing the best I can and everyone knows it. And then there's another point on your body, which is right there, and you start tapping there. I'm being quite sort of I'm blowing over this one because actually I have not had a lot of positive returns for myself about this one, but a lot of people swear by this. And it's basically, I'm sorry, face, below eyes, below in your chin, below your nose.
I do one every morning when I wake up. I start with my hands, then I move to my eyebrows, this side of my eyes, below my nose, below my chin, my collarbone, and then under my arms. And I keep repeating that.
You have a mantra that you say also?
It's on my phone. And yes, it's a mantra that you follow, that you say every time. Same mantra.
Do you remember it, or could you say it for us? I mean, is it too personal for me to ask?
No, the tapping part goes, even though I'm feeling anxious, honor how I feel. And I give my body permission to relax. Even though I'm feeling anxious, I honor how I feel. And I allow myself to calm down. Something like that. I don't remember exactly.
Honoring my feelings, though, is the central thing. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Oh, the tapping solution is
Cool. Yeah, and I Googled tapping one time and I got several things. Okay, I moved on. To change directions entirely, do you have a superpower? I am sure you must, because everyone has at least one. What do you really love doing? These are usually the clues to someone's superpower. What are you really good at that can make a difference? What is your passion? Notice that when you are in your superpower mode, you are energized and optimistic, clear in your intention, and often joyful. Can you identify yours? Can you recall the last time you were operating from or wielding your superpower? I love that word, wielding. Anybody can? John?
I don't know if these are superpowers, but as you've gone through these lists and talked, two things came to mind for me that always help me. One is I remind myself, I'm 83 years old, but I remind myself I've gone through some pretty hard times. And God has always taught me things through what I faced, and I've always gotten through them. And the other one is more simple. Every day, at the beginning of the day, I make a list of what I think I'm going to face and think through it a little bit. And somehow that just draws things together.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem so incomprehensible or anxious.
Yeah. Thank you.
superpower is helping people and loving people, because growing up, because of my disability, I've been on the receiving end of so much hate and put down and bullying and beating up. So I decided to change my anger into love and help others.
Thank you. Amen. Hallelujah. Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else? Mine is friendship. I know how to be a good friend.
Same.
I think
We should get together.
But just being with people and interacting, talking, really changes.
Yay. Well, I've got, here, this is the sentence. If you know what your superpower is, do you notice that it feeds you, that it connects you to God and to others, and it guides you in directions that seem to be right and fruitful? That matches for you, that matches for you, that matches for me. Yeah. As a possible strategy, could you identify what has already been proven to be your superpower and use it more? Could you wield it more regularly? Could you be intentional about your superpower in the world as your special gift? This is another way to focus on it rather than the possible bad outcomes you've read about. Noticing, observing, registering are all ways of getting some distance from the problem. Look at something instead of from your troubling emotions. And the side benefit of wielding one's superpower gives a person a sense of purpose. That is an essential element of living that results in anyone's spirits rising. We need to feel that we can affect the world or the people around us in effective and generative ways. Generative means it generates something, and it just might bring back some of the vitality you used to enjoy. There is a poem by a Hindu poet that might be about everyone using their superpowers more. And it's 3 verses, 3 lines, and I would just like to read it to you as my gift. I slept and dreamt that life was joy. I awoke and saw that life was service. I acted and behold, service was joy. Speaks to me. Is it your experience that when you help others, you get a lift? When you stretch to serve someone else, does it feel positive? When you do something to invest in the well-being of someone else, does it cause you to feel more connected to others in general? And here's the wind-up. To cope with this moment's threats and divisiveness, to endure despite our tending or trending to despair, a significant thing we can do is cultivate our connections with others. And I've been reading a lot of both spiritual and political writers currently, and they all say, in order to get through the next, the next period of time in this country, we need to have strong connections in community. We all need to feel part of a community. We need to know that we are cared for and valued by others around us. And this has always been true for anyone, whether they feel vulnerable, wobbly, or alone or not. That is the basic human need. We could invest in cultivating friendships to welcome others into our circle, or develop a circle of our own where we can be a treasured member. We instinctively recognize that when we are sad, overwhelmed, afraid, angry, we have a couple of options. We can separate ourselves, isolate, keep to ourselves, or we can reach out and risk being known, perhaps discover other ways of being. And I have to say, you guys who are grieving have been a model for me of making yourselves visible, connecting, showing up, being present, being part of things. And I deeply appreciate it because it gives me an avenue to be aware of you, to love you, like all those things. There is a concept that says for a person to feel well and whole, they need a sense of being valued and loved for who they are, being recognized as an individual of special features and characteristics. And of course, that is supposed to come with marriage. So if we lose our spouse, then we don't have that in the daily way that we're used to. But conversely, when a person begins to feel too much of an individual, too special, too unique, as in they don't feel understood, they stay isolated and apart from everyone, then they actually begin to be a suicide risk. We have seen variations of this isolation and alienation in much of the violence in our society for many years. Here's my assignment or challenge to you if you're up for it. Go home and inventory your circle of support. Count the loved ones you rely on and trust to see you through. Consider those whom you may only have a pleasant connection with, or maybe those you work with on a project. If the sum total of people that you feel nicely connected with feels good for you, hooray. Conversely, if that sum total feels inadequate to your needs, think of a way to increase it. Put yourself in wholesome situations to meet other people. Keep coming to church. Take a risk or two. Reach out to a neighbor. Allow yourself to be known by someone. Share something of yourself. And if you know others who are feeling abandoned or isolated, could you reach out to them, listen to them, love them up a little? Take a risk or two. We all need one another. And right now, in January and in our fractured world, it will take all of us finding our people to resist the shadow of distress and despair. Amen. Thank you.
Thank you. And that is super hard sometimes. Because I noticed that a lot of times if I is with someone, if I look directly in the eyes and really concentrate, it's a difference.
Yeah, right, because they feel seen. Yeah,
My wife was a happy person. And she was one of the most serving persons I've ever met. She was all over the place. She always could perceive when there was a need and she would be,
it made her a great pastor's wife.
yeah. Yeah, that's for sure. I guess for myself, I found that if I just truly listen when somebody's telling a story, and communicates that their story is true, honest, and believable, and they need to share their story, and if somebody just listens, accept it, there's a bond that really develops.
Right, totally.
There's an acceptance of both. I guess I've learned this in journey of faith in so many ways. You listen to someone intently, and it has amazed me over my life that things that people have told me, I have no idea why. They open up and they share. And I don't, you can't give a response. I think part of it has to do with the willingness to tell your own story. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's a sharing.
You seem like such a safe place.
Oh, I hope so, but I will see that, Danny would be the person that would reach to those that we felt were the more vulnerable, knowing that they needed to be heard. And she would open up. East Foundation, New York.
And we all have different personalities and different styles. So there's a lot of different ways that people are doing that, connecting, hearing one another. You have your unique way. Gracia had her unique way. You have your unique way. We all have our own way. Mary Beth has a totally different way.
She always that far apart. But we just have to learn to honor that difference on it for each of us.
Yes,
There's not one
yeah,
way of doing
right.
anything.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
It's a spectrum.
right, yeah. I don't know if you heard this, John, but Mary Beth said, did you hear why she's sitting over there?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Okay.
It's John's humor. I'm learning John's humor. That's fun.
Well, any other comments or questions?
Is that still recording? There's
I think so, yeah.
You're where part of where my journey has been. Before I retired, I knew I needed help with my PTSD. So I was able to connect with the VA. And the VA is probably one of the best psychological sources of information in the country. And they understand through combat, through trauma, what has caused, why some people go through an experience having PTSD after the experience. And I won't go into detail here why, but there's reasons why. And previous trauma within someone's life causes things to happen to where you witness something that's going to get first responders go through this. It's just not military, not national. And once you begin to understand that, then you can take the next step. Because what are some of the coping skills that you can develop? And for myself, what I learned through coaching and I physically, when I begin to get anxious, I physically think of a stop sign. What do you do with a stop sign? You stop, you look left, you look right, it's safe to proceed. And it's a calming that takes place at that point in time, so it's safe to proceed. And if you get in a situation where it really helped for me to get my hearing aids, because I was stressing so much of being able to hear someone speak. My whole focus was on trying to hear rather than So if there was background noise or if there's any sounds that were interrupting that, that increases your level of anxiety. And you just always constantly have to bring yourself back down to where you can hear, you can really understand what is being said, so you can participate in the group.
Exactly, yeah,
And if you begin to feel like you're being isolated from the group, all of those things begin to escalate. And once you feel like you've been isolated from the group, it's really difficult to bring it back down
right,
until you've been able to engage and the people around you allow you to be engaged in a healthy way. So,
that, and it's so subtle what you're describing. It's kind of terrifying how that can happen and nobody's aware of what actually is going on, but somebody is getting extricated out or something.
Yeah.
They're being exited from the group by that fact, yeah. And in fact, what I've heard is that loss of hearing contributes to dementia because when we can't hear and we're not engaged, we're not effectively engaged.
right,
Mhm. Yeah.
those are the stages that develop through that.
Yeah.
That's why the suicide rate is so extremely high within the military. That in conversation, one of the worst things that you could say to someone is to get over it. But it's the most damaging thing for grief, for any person that's gone through trauma. That is the worst thing that you could say to someone,
Yeah.
is just get over it.
Right,
That communicates that you don't care, that communicates you do not understand the situation, that communicates that you have little value. That's damaging.
yeah. Any other comments?
I just say that, we moved here because our son-in-law had ALS, and so we moved here to be his caretaker, and it totally changed our lifestyle. We lost all our friends and the situation we were used to, and we eventually got counseling. And, it just makes such a difference to get help when you need it and to talk about it. And I still go, and I'll say, well, I don't think we need to go back. He'll call up with every now and then and say, oh, we're okay, and then we'll go. That'd be good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Well, she obviously loves you guys. And you can probably feel it. Yeah, yeah. Right, right. That's a wonderful connection.
And so in the process now, we've been here at St. Andrew quite a while. And when I was going through all this winter, I just felt so surrounded by love, with love, by people that I knew that reached out. And it was overwhelming. I mean, not overwhelming, but
Comforting.
comforting. Yeah, just gave me such peace. And, oh, I can imagine.
Mhm.
The interaction is so important.
Right, 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 yes.
Danny and I was a community that comforted us and still continues to. Without that would be so isolated.
I think this is also important, what we talked about today. How many people are here?
I know.
How do you carry this out, or why? I mean, I could make suggestions, you can, but the fact is, there's 4 of us here, right?
I know,
And
yeah.
it's to respond to that, John, what I finally beginning to pick up on. The reason why there are not more people here is that we've been trained culturally not to ask for help. So people will not look for help, they're afraid there's a stigma. How do we get over it? Yeah, and that's John, that is my challenge.
Well, I think there are so many connections between just being a human and being a child of God, because this is not a sermon, this is not a spiritual guide, but still we can love people, we can reach out to people, we can make ourselves known to people, we can embrace people and try to bring them into our circle, you know, and that really is, that's the bottom line, that's about being human. So, I'm a little bit bummed also that there's not very many people here. But Mary Beth and I had a great time doing this because she's a great editor. I had to like whittle a lot of it out there. But we can still understand that it is our task to cultivate community and love with one another and with others who are not here. And that has to be okay.
If it makes a difference in one person's life, it's totally worth it.
Right, right, yeah.
I think part of the trick is recognizing when somebody is in need and they won't recognize it for themselves, but you might. How to approach them, you have to be very subtle and careful so you don't scare them off, so to speak. Or so they'll accept what you are trying to communicate to them. I mean, I'm kind of like that way. I don't tell people what they really want to know something. But if I want somebody to know something, that means, you know, I'm finally able to give up the quote self-control, which doesn't ever exist, and ask for somebody to help me get through that fear. But trying to approach somebody who's not ready to even think about it themselves or accept it from somebody else, that's a tough one. I've been in that position. Both of those things. So I think that may be another reason some people don't want to be in a class like this. They don't want to know that they're even, like you said, in a fix like that, so to speak.
Becomes public.
Yeah, too public.
Well, in fact, Mary Beth said, you know, how are you gonna have the seating and how are you gonna set this up so that if people wanna write something down, it's confidential and no one else can see it? And if it's gonna be recorded, is it gonna be, will people be put off by that? And because she's always thinking about everything.
Just seeing it from different perspectives.
Right,
That's the other part.
yes,
of this,
yeah.
Just understanding that people have different perspectives. And then just listening to that other perspective to give yourself some education about how somebody else is looking at something. And
Yeah.
and not to be ready with an answer to say, this is what you need to do. And we're not getting solutions, we're giving steps so you can walk to find your own solution. That's just, thank God, the road to Emmaus, we're walking along together, helping each other journey.
And we're just accompanying one another.
Exactly.
You know, we're walking each other home.
That's right. And that's, to me, it's not an action. We was. Sure, yeah, we did. One last thing that I would say is that all of us are learning how to live life out of COVID. There's a group that's working with the school districts about teaching children how to interact on recess.
We're in the classroom.
Yeah, this is just in the playground now, recess. It's out
in
playing.
the classroom too.
That's the next step. But so we're all we're learning how to be church post-COVID. And yes, it's an important part of what we can do to be church post-COVID. To honestly be able to communicate with each other in a healthy way. And some of us are going to stumble. I have stumbled more than once. And I reflect on those times where I've stumbled, but it's been driven by the love of the church, for the love of the community. And when I see the community being threatened, I have to respond. And that's just me. And that's, I think, comes back again from my military background. As a platoon sergeant, if I see my platoon being threatened, it's my job to respond, find a solution to get through whatever is happening, bring a team back together so we can move forward together.
Well, you're giving me an idea, because when I read the prayer requests, like Mike Thompson was a recent one, I don't know him from Adam. I don't know who his wife is. So I think, well, I don't have to worry about that guy. But in fact, what if I wrote them a note and said, I'm here now, you're not here, maybe you can come back someday, but we are praying for you. Yeah, yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
In fact, I've met one of the congregational members through Reagan. Japanese, then we connected and become friends. And I would have never dreamt that possible.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank
It
you.
was, I'm glad it's recorded because I'm sure other people are going to see this too.
Great, thank you.
Appreciate it. And I appreciate our first conversation.
Me too. Yeah, yes, and I appreciate our first conversation over Thai food.
I don't know how to turn that off with reset.
I don't either.
Recording, so maybe I will find that.
Maybe well, if it's Zooming, let's see if we
John,
can figure this out.
Good to see you.
If there's a way to save it.
Okay, let's go.
We're just trying to figure out how to turn it off.
How to turn it off. Here we go. We'll just go here and hit stop.